Hey guys, welcome to Learn Today IGCSE. This video is a tutorial on Physics Paper 4 Theory, variant 4.2 from February-March 2025. I'll be starting with question 4 since this is on chapter 1.2. A train has a maximum speed of 200 km per hour. It accelerates from rest. Remember, from rest means your initial velocity is 0 meters per second, with constant deceleration of 0.7 meters per second square. Part 1 define acceleration. If you are questioned on defining a term, you can always refer to your course specification. Make sure you're looking at the right one, which is 2023 to 2025, which is your current syllabus. And here you have it that acceleration is defined as change in velocity per unit time. Next, part 2. Show that the maximum speed of the train is approximately 56 meters per second. So you have been given that the maximum speed is 200 kilometers per hour and they want you to prove that it's 56 meters per second. So as you can see here, it's only involving a unit change. So to convert kilometers, we're going to multiply it by 1000 meters, and to convert hours into seconds, we'll divide it by 3600, which gives you 55.55, which is approximately 56 meters per second. Next, question part 3. Calculate the time taken for the train to reach its maximum speed. So we are given with the acceleration, initial velocity, and final velocity, and we're looking for the time taken for it to reach this maximum speed. So the formula related to this is acceleration equal to the rate of change of speed over time. Since we're looking for time, we will rearrange this formula and just substitute in the values that we have. Just pay attention here that we are going to use 56 meters per second as our final velocity instead of 200 kilometers per hour because the acceleration here is given in meters and seconds. Hence, we're going to use the velocity in meters and seconds as well. Just put the values in your calculator and you will get a time of 80. The unit for the time would be in seconds. Next question, part B. The train has a total mass of 440 kilograms. Calculate the force which causes the acceleration of the train. The formula related to force is F equals to ma. Since you're given with your mass, just substitute the value, and the acceleration, as we have previously, is 0.7 meters per second square. Just put this value in your calculator and in two significant figures, you would get 310 thousandths. Please don't forget to always include your units in your final answer. And for force, the unit is newtons. Next, part 3. The train travels into a headwind. So headwind meaning that there is wind on the opposing direction. The force of this headwind opposes the motion of the train. State and explain the effect of this force on the motion of the train. Okay. Now the force of the headwind opposes, which means goes opposite to the direction of the train. So this acts as a resistive or a frictional force. If you have a force that acts against you, it will slow down the motion of the object. So in this case, it will cause the train to decelerate. And as for the explanation, you can say that the force of the headwind opposes the motion of the train, so it acts as a resistive force. Next, question 1 is from chapter 1.5 Forces. Figure 1.1 shows a force extension graph for a spring. This question here is testing you on your knowledge for Hooke's law, where it says that the extension of a spring is directly proportional to the force applied, provided its limit of proportionality is not exceeded. Question A. Calculate the spring constant of the spring. Now force equals to the constant of the spring multiplied by the extension of the spring. So rearranging this formula, we'll get like this. Since the gradient of this graph is constant, we can just take any pair of force and extension to use in our formula, which gives you a value of 50,000, and the unit would be Newton over meter. Next, question B. A student states that the spring has not reached the limit of proportionality when a force of 4,500 newtons is applied to it. State how the graph shows that this statement is true. At force 4,900, we can see that the line is still straight, showing a directly proportional relationship between the force and extension. So if the graph is still a straight line, this means that the spring is still obeying Hooke's law and has not reached the limit of proportionality. If the spring has reached the limit of proportionality, the graph will move in a straight line and then bend upwards because it no longer obeys Hooke's law. Next question C. Springs can be compressed by forces. The spring described in figure 1.1 is compressed by a force F and has an extension of negative 0.025. Determine F. Since we are using the same type of spring, then the value of K, which is the constant, is still at 50,000 newtons per meter, which gives us a value of 1,250 newtons. Remember that the value of negative here is just indicate that this is a compressive force. State whether force is a scalar quantity or a vector quantity. Explain your answer. Force is a vector quantity as it has both the magnitude and the direction. If you go to your course syllabus under the unit 1.1, you will see that vectors are force, weight, velocity, acceleration, momentum. You are given with both the list of scalar quantity and vector quantity, so please remember them. Next question 2 is from Unit 1.6 Momentum. Trolley A and Trolley B are on a horizontal frictionless bench. Trolley A moves to the right with a constant velocity u equals to 0.44 meters per second. Remember, u means initial velocity and v stands for final velocity. And trolley B is stationary. Question A. State the momentum of trolley B before the collision and explain your answer. Now, momentum is given by mass times velocity. Since trolley B is stationary, so then the velocity will be equal to 0. Therefore, the momentum of trolley B will be 0. Next, question B. After the collision, the two trolleys are joined together and travel with a constant velocity. V equals to 0.18 meters per second to the right. The mass of trolley A is 0.75 kilograms and we are asked to calculate the mass of trolley B. Okay, when you are given with questions of momentum, there could be three different scenarios. The first scenario is pretty simple. You are given a moving object, mass and velocity provided, and you are asked to calculate the momentum. So all you have to do is just substitute your mass and velocity, you will get the momentum. Second scenario is when you have momentum of one object before collision and after collision. So this one you've got to pay attention since momentum is a vector quantity, it has direction. So before collision, the direction or the velocity would be positive, and after collision, since the direction changed, now your velocity will be negative. So to find the change of momentum, we are going to use mv minus mu, where one of the velocity would be in negative and one would be positive to show opposite direction. And the next scenario is when you have two objects before and after collision. In this case, please remember to apply the principle of conservation of momentum, where it says that the momentum before collision will be equal to the momentum after collision. So before collision, you have two objects. Mass of object A, initial velocity of object A. Add with mass of object B, initial velocity of object B will be equal to mass of object A and final velocity of object A. Adding with mass of object B and final velocity of object B. So this is the formula that you have to remember. So now coming back to our question, this would be based on scenario 3, whereby you've got a collision of two different objects. So we are going to apply the principle of conservation of momentum. So the momentum before collision is equal to the momentum after collision. Now before collision, we've got trolley A, so the mass and initial velocity of trolley A, and trolley B, which is the mass and initial velocity of trolley B, equals to momentum after collision. Now after collision, the two trolleys are joined together. So if the two trolleys are joined together, then the mass of trolley A and mass of trolley B can be combined. And they both travel with a constant velocity, only one velocity, at 0.18 meters per second. And we're looking to find the mass of trolley B. So let's substitute whatever information that we have into our formula. Mass of trolley A was already given to us, which was 0.75 kilogram, and the initial velocity was 0.44 meters per second. This is before the collision. And we don't know the mass of B, but we know that the velocity is 0. So anything multiplied to 0 is going to end up giving us 0. Hence why the momentum of trolley B before collision was 0. The mass of trolley A is 0.75. Before and after collision, the mass remains the same. And then we're looking for mass of trolley B, so that remains unknown. Now the velocity after collision is 0.18 meters per second. So you'll make mass of trolley B as your subject, use your algebra, and you will get the mass of trolley B 1.08 kilograms, or in two significant figures that will be 1.1 kilograms. Next question C, part 1. The trolleys move onto a rough surface which exerts a constant force F on the trolleys and brings them to rest in 2.6 seconds. Calculate F. Remember that the formula F that you have in your syllabus, the most important one is force equals to mass times acceleration. And acceleration is V minus U over T. So this means that we can derive another formula of force which has the change of momentum. Since this question is on momentum, so this formula is going to come in handy. So let's calculate the force. mv minus mu is the change of momentum. So let's first find the change of momentum. The momentum after collision is the total mass of trolley A and B multiplied by the final velocity. Now that we have the mass of trolley B, we can add up their masses together and multiply by the final velocity after the collision was 0.18 and minus before collision, which was from trolley A mass of 0.75 and the initial velocity of trolley A was 0.44. Trolley B was stationary, hence it had zero momentum and we will not include it in the momentum before collision. Divided with the time. Time given is 2.6 seconds, giving you a force of negative 0.13 newtons. And remember that negative only means the direction of the force is on the opposite direction. Next question, part 2. A different rough surface exerts a smaller resistive force on the trolleys. State how this affects the time taken to bring the trolley to rest and explain your answer. Remember, according to our formula, F equals to mv minus mu over t. If the value of force decreases, that means that the value of time will increase, given that the change of momentum remains the same. So a smaller resistive force means the time taken increases. So for explanation, you can say that a smaller resistive force causes a smaller deceleration. So this means it takes a longer time to reduce the velocity to become zero. Next, question 3 is from chapter 2 and the next part is from chapter 4. Figure 3.1 shows a mains electric heater used to heat a small room. So you're covered with a shiny metal surface and there's heating elements inside of it. Question A. State the region of electromagnetic spectrum which radiates thermal energy from the heater. The region of electromagnetic spectrum that radiates thermal energy, also used for thermal imaging, is infrared. Next, question part B. Explain why the shiny metal surface behind the heating element increases the thermal energy radiated into the room. Okay. Based on your course specification for Chapter 2, you need to be able to describe the effect of surface color, for instance when they're black or shiny, and how it affects the emission, absorption, and reflection. So for shiny surfaces, as per this question, it is very good at reflecting heat and it's very bad at absorbing heat. So for the first point, you can say that they are not able to absorb heat which are radiated in the room, and when they reflect back the heat, there is a lot of heat that will be reflected into the room, which causes the thermal energy inside the room to increase. Next, question part C. The metal casing outside of the heater is earthed. State why this is an important safety feature. An earth wire is an important safety feature as in the case of live wire comes in contact, the earth wire will provide a low resistance path for the electric current to flow to the ground, which causes a large current to flow in your circuit and trip the fuse. This way you prevent electrocution. You don't have to write this whole thing, you can just write what is highlighted. And some of the other safety features that you should know about is a fuse, a circuit breaker, and double insulation. So you can take a screenshot and read it on your own time. Next, question D. The mains voltage is 230 voltage. The two identical heating elements are connected in parallel, and each heating element has a resistance of 89 ohms. Calculate the current in one heating element. Okay, so the voltage is always the same throughout the entire circuit if the circuit is a parallel circuit. So since they are identical, let's just calculate this one over here. And to calculate that, we can just use our Ohm's law. Rearranging this formula, we will get voltage over resistance. The voltage that passes through this heating element is 230 voltage and the resistance is 89 ohms, giving us the current in two significant figures, 2.6. And remember, the units for current is ampere. Please do not forget to include your units in your final answer. Next, part 2. Show that the electrical power of the heater is approximately 1200 watts and state any equation you use in words or symbol. So the equation that we are going to use here is power equals to current times voltage, since we have the current and we also have the voltage provided. But pay attention here that the current will not be 2.6 amperes because the current 2.6 ampere is just what passes through one heating element. In a parallel circuit, the current will split when it passes through a junction. So this means that the total current is 2.6 amperes multiplied by 2, giving us 5.2 amperes. So the total current in the circuit is 5.2 amperes and the total voltage in the circuit is 230 voltage, which gives us approximately a value of 1200 watts. Next, question part 3. The heater is 95% efficient at converting electrical work done to thermal energy. Calculate the thermal energy emitted by the heater in D part 2 in 60 seconds and give your answers in two significant figures. We know that the work done is 1200 watts. Remember, work done is actually how much of energy is transferred per second. And we are looking to find for 60 seconds. So we'll just multiply this by 60 seconds, giving us 72,000 and the unit is joules. However, the heater is only 95% efficient and this is 100% efficiency. So what we're going to do is just take the energy that we have and multiply it with 95% and you will get a thermal energy of 68,400 joules. In two significant figures, that would be 68,000 joules. Or if you want to put it in standard form, then it will be 6.8 times 10 to the power of 4 joules. Don't forget your units. Solving question 5 to 10 on the next part of the video.